Welcome back to the Fundamentals of Object Workshop. This is part 4 of single stack objects. And in this lesson, we'll continue creating a single stack object and review the options available in the Object Properties panel. We will also add a few additional restrictions. Let's get started. So we've gone through the process of adding and linking objects, adding and aligning subpopulations, selecting which fields to publish, and adding restrictions and transformations at the object or stack level. So now we're ready to define the object's properties. At this point, most of the panels available are ones you're already familiar with. We have reviewed all of these panels except for the Advanced Analytics panel in previous lessons or courses. So let's take a quick review of each one before adding some additional restrictions. The naming panel is where you define the object's name and description, as well as the object type and table or view name. For this object, we did this in a previous lesson. We reviewed the restrictions and transformations when reviewing the stack base properties in a previous lesson in this course. We created a derived field that was associated with the stack base object, and for this lesson, we're going to add a few common restrictions. First, we're going to limit the records in the object we're creating to those found in a custom value set. Second, we're going to restrict the object's results so that we keep the most recent assessment for each patient. Third, we'll add a restriction to ensure the patient's date of death field is null, so that we do not include any deceased patients in the object. The last lesson in this course reviews how to create custom value sets. So for now, we will use the one that has already been created. The custom value set contains a list of zip codes that are eligible for those participating in the program that the patient assessment data uses to find possible participants. So let's go ahead and add the first restriction. We'll start by clicking the Add Restriction button. Next, we'll search for the Keep Ordinal N pattern. This pattern will enable us to keep the most recent lab assessment for each patient. We'll first specify that we want to keep the most recent lab assessment for each patient by indicating that the patient ID is common amongst the multiple assessments. Tabbing down to the Keep Only Ordinal field, here we specify that we want to keep only one instance of the multiple assessments for each patient. In this field, we select lab date because this is the field that can be used to determine which lab assessment is the most recent among a patient's multiple assessments. Now we can specify that the ordering of lab assessment date should be descending, which will list the most recent lab dates first. Though this is a matter of stylistic choice, since we're only creating 3 restrictions, I'm not going to add a block header. Let's add a brief comment clarifying what this pattern is doing. So something like keeping only most recent lab assessment for each patient should do the trick. Clicking Done, we'll now see the summary of our description with a note stating that the restriction will change the grain of this object, which we would expect. And that's it. We just created our first restriction, and if I wasn't talking so much, it would have only taken a few seconds to complete this data transformation. Now we can add our second restriction. Again, we'll start by clicking the Add Restriction button, and we can search for the Is in Value Set pattern. This pattern will restrict the object's records to only those that match the values in the value set we specify. First, we specify which of the object's fields should be used, matched against the value set. Since the value set we are using for this restriction contains zip codes, we will use the SL1 patient zip code 5-digit field. Second, we'll specify the value set by first indicating the value set's value type, which in this case is zip 5-digit. Then we'll specify the name of the value set. Here again, I am not going to add a block header. Skipping that, we'll move down to the comment field. I'll add a brief comment here, keeping only zip codes in the program's scope. Again, adding this restriction was a very quick exercise. Now we can add our final restriction. And as you're aware, we can start by clicking the Add Restriction button. We'll search for the Is Null pattern. This pattern will restrict the object's records to only those where the field we specify is null. First, let's specify which of the object's fields should be used to check for null values. We want to ensure the SL1 patient date of death field is null, so the object only includes patients who are still alive. Again, I am not going to add a block header, so let's skip down to the comment field. I'll add my comment, ensure patient is not deceased, and then I'll select Done. That's it for adding restrictions, so let's move on to the Advanced Analytics panel. The Advanced Analytics panel allows you to add a model that has been defined in the Advanced Analytics workspace. We'll dive into Ursa Studio's advanced analytics capabilities in another learning plan. So for now, let's skip down to the Published Fields panel. By now, you're familiar with this version of the Published Fields panel. We reviewed this panel's functionality in the Semantic Mapping course. The published fields panels that are found in objects that contribute to the stack, for example, the SMTRN patient assessment, allow you to select which fields to publish. In this panel, the fields published throughout the stack are listed with their field group. As you probably remember, you can edit the ordering of the field groups as well as the fields within groups by selecting the crossed arrows icons and dragging and dropping items into the desired order. You're also familiar with the Object Metadata panel from previous lessons. Here you define information about the object's layer, temporal class, as well as case and patient IDs. We reviewed the Terms panel and how to create terms in the Semantic Mapping Objects course. So here we'll just attach a term that has already been created. In a previous lesson in this course, we added a derived field that we labeled GFR value indicates ESRD. I went ahead and added a term with the same name to clarify the definition of this field for anyone interested. To add a term to this object, you can simply type the name of the term you're looking for into this dropdown and select it from the existing term library. The validation panel offers two validation checks, which are selected and pre-configured by default. The first validation check ensures the object has at least one row. The second checks for changes in the number of records associated with the object anytime it's ETL'd following its creation. 20% is the default, but can be changed as needed. The Data Review panel offers a 25-row preview of the object. The final row in the table provides some basic summary statistics about each column. This panel is useful for quick validation of your object. And as you might remember, you can also restrict the results of this table using the filtering options above it. The ETL History panel shows the history of object runs or when it was created and refreshed. And lastly, the Revision History panel offers an overview of changes that have been made to the object and gives you the opportunity to restore an object from a previous version. Let's pause there, and we will pick this back up with part 5 of single stack objects. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next lesson.